Hi, I'm Paul. For this video, I'm going to talk about why some people get more conditioned or are more conditioned than some other people. So some people are more likely to find the truth or become awakened compared to some others. But I'm going to bring that up a little bit later, I think. I'm going to work my way towards it. But there's also a few other things that I'm going to talk about in this video as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the structure of the ego. How the ego keeps you tied in. When I mention the ego, like I've said before, the ego is attachment to knowledge or attachment to memory, which also includes thoughts, impressions, ideas, images of yourself, your own images and ideas of yourself. So the ego is the attachment to that. I'm going to bring up something else in this video as well, which also relates to that. So the idea of this video is to try and help us see how we become so attached to knowledge. Whenever I say knowledge in this video, I also mean memory, thoughts, images, all of them, all of everything which involves thought. So I'm going to bring up something else in this video to try and help it along, and this something else I'm going to bring is grandiosity. I've heard lots of people talk about it in psychology, but I've never really heard anybody actually say what the structure of grandiosity is. Lots of people say, well, grandiosity is somebody who thinks highly of himself and so on. But what I'm going to bring into this is my idea of grandiosity, which is grandiosity is the strength of the attachment to knowledge. Remember, when I say knowledge, I mean all the others, just anything to do with thought. So grandiosity is the strength of the attachment to knowledge. Now, attachment to knowledge is the ego. So grandiosity being the strength of the ego, let's say. Now, when I say the strength of the attachment to knowledge, what I'm suggesting here is grandiosity obviously is a spectrum. Well, I think as long as you've got an ego, then there is definitely some sort of the strength of attachment to knowledge. So, how does the strength of attachment to knowledge work? I think this is a lot to do with our conditioning, and I think this is what wraps us up in this conditioning. Let's just say I ask you a question. No, sorry. Let's say I give you a piece of knowledge. Okay? Before I give you a piece of this knowledge, let's just say that I'm a person who's not very well educated, and you know this. Perhaps I'm homeless, which is easy to believe because I kind of look like a homeless person with this beard and hairdo. So just imagine that you know that I'm not very educated and so on. And I give you a piece of information. Let's just say the sun is 9 million years away. Sorry, not 9 million years, 9 million miles away. Okay, so I'm obviously a person who's not very educated, so you don't really become attached to that knowledge that I give you. You somewhat shrug it off. Well, perhaps he doesn't know, really, he's just saying that, so you don't become attached to that knowledge. Okay? Let's just say I'm still the homeless person. Only now I've decided to wear a suit, style my hair quite nicely. I'm going to sit up straight, put my hands in a way that shows authority, stare at you, and then say, oh, the sun? Well, that's 9 million miles away. Well, thereabouts. Perhaps, well, it's actually just over, but it's around about 9 million. You see, in this case, you start to believe more what I'm saying. it's more likely that I'm given the correct knowledge. So therefore, you become more attached to that piece of knowledge when you take it on board. Now, let's just say that you're in school, back when you was a child, and there's a classroom staring at the teacher, and the teacher's giving information, and the teacher says, the sun is 9 million miles away. Now, being a child, and your parents have told you, make sure you listen at school, and we've been told over and over again, concentrate, pay attention, listen. So we just take it in. We become, in school, attached to all the knowledge of a teacher because the teacher is the authority. He must be right. Who am I to question it? So all of this knowledge that we build up, memories and so on in our head, we become attached to that. So like I said towards the beginning of the video, I'm going to say why some people become more conditioned and why others don't. So if you imagine you're at school and your parents have been saying you must pay attention, you must listen to the teacher, this is going to be your future, it'll be your success, and so on and so on. So I take this seriously. And I sit in front of a teacher and listen to every word. All of this knowledge I become highly attached to. This is going to be my future, this knowledge. And also, there's some people perhaps at the back of the class who are a little bit distant, not paying attention properly and not taking it too seriously. Perhaps in some cases, some people might have been through certain sorts of traumas or abuse, so we seem very distant from the knowledge that the teacher is giving. This means that they wouldn't get attached to the knowledge in the same way as the person who's taking it seriously. In other words, because they're not getting attached to the knowledge, or the strength of attachment to the knowledge is much weaker. We can say that they have a much weaker strength to knowledge, which would also mean less conditioned. And the people who take it extremely seriously, the knowledge, have a much stronger attachment to the knowledge that they store in their head. Meaning, having much stronger of an attachment to the knowledge is kind of equivalent to saying stronger ego, because remember, the ego is the attachment to knowledge. So when I say the strength of the attachment to the knowledge, when we have quite a strong attachment to the knowledge, it seems we have less ability to question the knowledge in the first place, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. We heard it from a reliable source, so therefore it must be correct. So I'm going to attach strongly to that knowledge. So if I was to ask you a question, let's say, do you believe in free will? Maybe some of you are going to say, yeah. Some might say, no, I don't believe in free will. Some might even say, I've been thinking about this for ages, but I don't know. But a lot of us can accept that we do know what free will is, to some extent. But then if I was to ask another question, what is will? Not free will, what is will? Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people right now might have become a little bit unhinged. All of a sudden it's like, oh, well, in this case, I must not know what free will is if I'm not too sure what will is. But it seems that all this time I've believed I know what free will is. It's kind of like putting a wedge between my attachment to this knowledge and separating my attachment to it, leaving me now unhinged, a little bit insecure, kind of like someone maybe stabbing a pin in my image. Now, I know this can probably make some people a little bit angry and maybe defensive and so on, but I'm not trying to do that as such. Just want to point out that sometimes we don't look into things, and I guess that was probably the best way I could come up with to try and point out that sometimes we get so used to things. I'll tell you another example, actually. I remember I was working with somebody a few years ago trying to teach them about this. And he said to me one day, after a while of me trying to teach him, he said that for ages at dinner time at work with all the other guys, he was all talking about Donald Trump all day and having a laugh and saying things. And he said, I joined in. But I was pretty sure that I knew what I was talking about and everything about Donald Trump. But now I suddenly realize I know nothing. But at the time I was so attached to it that I was convinced I knew it. So what I'm saying is, when we become attached to knowledge, we don't always know that. We're just attaching to the knowledge that we've been given without questioning it. So to me, trying to wake up, find the truth, firstly, it's got to start off with some separation. In the sense of separation from the attachment to knowledge. Like I say, some people have a very strong attachment to knowledge because they've relied on it so much. Perhaps they've been told this will be a future, this will be success, and so on. Some people have a much weaker. So it's going to vary with people how easy or so it would be to wake up from the conditioning, see the truth. Like I was saying, the first step is to gain some sort of distance. And to do this means to question everything. Relearn. Not just rely on knowledge, but to question everything. Like I say, to do this, there's got to be some sort of a separation. To make separation, we have to make space. In fact, I'm not going to go into actually making space for this video. I've probably gone through what I wanted to talk about, so thanks very much for listening.